The war in Ukraine has made the United Nations anything but united.
And it's there that Ukraine and Russia face off with claim and counterclaim over alleged war crimes. The man arguing Ukraine's case is its outspoken ambassador to the UN, Sergei Kyslytsya.
I spoke to him from New York and asked what he knew about the latest alleged Russian atrocity, a missile strike on civilians at the Kramatorsk train station.
Well, it's yet another example of how the Russian army defies every possible standard or rule of behaving. Just yesterday, we had a very successful vote about removing the Russian Federation from the Human Rights Council. And next morning, we have yet another example of how the Russian actions are not consistent with any standard of the United Nations.
Russia has denied doing it, haven't they? What's it like sitting there at the UN and listening to Russia say that these attacks are fake?
Russia denies everything, and it denies everything in a way that it's not really imaginable. That we're not surprised. I would be surprised if Russia really admits it. Russia does not admit that Russia wages a war. Their narrative is that what they do is a special operation in Ukraine. They would insist that they do not wage a war. They would say in a very perverted way that they avail of Article 51 of the UN Charter, which is basically about self-defense. And you may hear on multiple occasions here in the United Nations that the Russian ambassador would say that they avail of Article 51. And that the operation, at one point, the Russian ambassador even said that what they do, they're doing peacekeeping, they're bringing peace to Ukraine, literally.
How do you sit there and listen to that?
It's not only me. I mean, I can guarantee you that even the Russian interpreters who work for the United Nations are having a very hard time interpreting that a bunch of lies every time we have a meeting on Ukraine. It's very difficult. I mean, I tried at the very initial stages, I tried to appeal to dignity, to religious feelings of my Russian counterparts, but it is to no avail. I mean, they're kind of people who are, who have proved on many occasions that they're worse than the Soviet diplomats, you know? And that is a result of 20 plus years of brainwashing. And we're all very sorry because we can't really, I mean, I discussed it with some of my colleagues, other ambassadors, and we all wonder how any person who lies that way can go and sleep every night. That should be very, very, very difficult.
Your president is calling what's happening there genocide, but other world leaders aren't using that word, including Joe Biden. Should they be using that word?
Well, we have to understand that by the end of the day, it is up to the tribunal to confirm whether it was genocide or whether it was a war crime or crime against humanity. That is a political statement of the leader of the nation who believes that the war crimes that Russians commit in Ukraine, they amount to genocide. Because what they do, and we see it almost daily, they try to destroy, annihilate not only the military targets, but indiscriminately the civilian targets, the infrastructure, schools, hospitals. So when you see that, you understand that it is not merely the military planning, it's an attack on the entire nation. But as I said, it's up to, eventually up to an international tribunal to establish. And Ukraine is very much interested in having an international tribunal by the end of the day.
Our own Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, has stopped short of calling Vladimir Putin a war criminal. What's your response to that?
To what exactly?
The fact that Jacinda Ardern won't use the term war criminal in respect of Vladimir Putin.
Well, he is a war criminal, but what will be his responsibility and the scope of responsibility up to the investigation and trial. But let me assure you that the way the international community is united behind the idea of accountability, behind the idea that there will be no impunity after this war, encourages all of us that we will have necessary evidence collected properly and presented for the judges of International Tribunal to consider.
This part of the world is a long way from the war. So what would you say to a New Zealander or an Australian or someone in the Pacific who feels like we have no stake in this conflict?
It is a very irresponsible and simplified way of looking at the state of affairs. I can give you another example of a foreign minister of one Caribbean country that is more than 10,000 miles away from the center of the war, and nevertheless, this foreign minister, being interviewed by a local national TV station, literally said that his country has a stake in what is going on, and his country should be engaged to put an end to the war as soon as possible. Because we are living in the 21st century, you don't really need you don't really need an army crossing your borders to attack your country. In the 21st century, you can be attacked in cyberspace. You can be attacked by means of financial terrorism. You may suffer because of food insecurity. You may suffer because of energy insecurity. So it is not a conventional 20th century style war that any country of the world can be affected. And another thing is that the kind of war we see now, it affects almost every aspect of our life in a transversal manner. I mean, I can tell you, Ukraine supplied before the war 55% of global sunflower oil. There are countries on this planet that depend on grain supply from Ukraine from 50 to 70%. So now when Ukrainian farmers cannot start the regular agricultural cycle, you can imagine that some countries may face a situation that may bring them to the edge of starvation.
In terms of sanctions, though, I mean, the EU has just banned Russian coal. Other countries like New Zealand have been escalating sanctions. But Putin's support seems to be strong at home. Russia's economy still endures. Are sanctions the right tactic?
I think that sanctions by themselves cannot really change the state of play, but sanctions are economically justifiable. They are politically necessary. And I think that 90% of those sanctions affect oligarchs and Putin himself. But let me tell you something. In the course of the last month, Russia received 35 billion euros in payments for supply of energy resources to Europe. So on the one hand, sanctions target Russia. On the other hand, Europe is so insecure energy-wise that even in the time of war, it continues to provide Russia with dozens of billions of euros in payments.
So Russia can finance its war through the energy payments. Yeah.
Well, exactly. So when I hear from some third countries here in New York that sanctions may bring the Russian population to the edge of humanitarian catastrophe, I say it's far from reality.
I mean, you say that sanctions are limited. What about military aid. What about NATO planes in the air over Ukraine? Are you still pushing for that, or have you given up on that?
We have now given up on that because we are constantly 24/7 in talks with many partners about the supply of weapons to Ukraine, and we can be moderately satisfied with the change of their attitude after the beginning of the war, because let's be frank, there were partners who didn't believe that we would survive a day after the invasion started. We survived now more than 40 days, and we demonstrated the degree of resistance and ability to withstand the invasion, even pushing back the Russians on many fronts.
So are you saying that you have partners in Europe that are going to give you planes, or are you saying that NATO?
No, I'm not saying that. No, I don't think that so far we reached the point where Europeans or North Americans are ready to provide us with aircraft, with military aircraft, but we are receiving more other types of weapons, including the air defense.
Yeah. Okay, I mean, if you push for military help or even military intervention from NATO, Russia says that, you know, that could be an existential threat. I mean, it could increase or escalate to a nuclear option. Could that happen? Are you worried that that could happen?
That's kind of blackmail that Putin uses. I don't believe it's possible. It means suicide to Putin himself. And the nature of Putin, who likes to project an image of being invincible and brave man, the nature of Putin is he's a very weak person. I don't believe that he wants to kill himself by launching a nuclear attack, because it will receive the appropriate reply,
right.
And that will be basically suicide.
Your President Zelensky says he believes in victory. What will you compromise on in order to end this war?
We will not compromise our territory, so that's out of question. We will not compromise our sovereignty. It's also not on the table. But let me tell you, the thing is, it is not about the military victory in our territory. Dramatic and tragic as it is still quite possible, and the chances are very high that we will defeat the Russian army militarily. But for the interests of the collective West and globally, it's not enough. Because if we do not eradicate the root causes of this war, if we will switch to business as usual after we reach this or another military solution, or if we sign a peace treaty, and then we switch to business as usual, that will be the most devastating outcome for the civilization. In fact, we have been complacent and forgiving many things that Putin has done so far. We were putting fresh layer of paint every time he would do something terrible. And that's basically what allowed him to become a dictator,
right,
of the level where he is now.
So finally, just briefly, Putin has to go to end this war?
Russia should get rid of Putin. I put it this way. If Russia wants to return back at the beginning of the very long path to democracy.
Okay. Sergei Kyslytsya, Ukraine's UN ambassador, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you.